Yo, what's up everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of Crime in Court USA. I'm recording this on November 15, 2023. I'm your host, Mundo Carrillo. Yes, I am bringing back the Crime in Court USA. So, it's been over a year. Yeah, I think I last published one of these last August. So, if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I started Crime in Court USA. And then I did that for a while, 46 episodes, right? And then I changed the name of the podcast to Mundo's News Program because I wanted to, I guess, just be able to have more variety. If I didn't want to cover a crime story, if I want to cover other stuff, I want to be able to do that, right? So I changed the name, but relatively kept it the same. Turns out, though, I thought that would be easier to do. Turns out it's actually harder to do when you don't have a focus. They say that when you start a podcast that you should keep it very specific. And I did that at first, but then I changed it to be more broad, and I thought I'd be able to succeed. Not so much. You do kind of need to pick a niche. I'm going to say niche. I know some people say niche or whatever. Niche. I used to cover crime and criminal justice for the Albuquerque Journal in New Mexico for nearly 6 years. So this is just kind of my thing, man. And I think I'm going to stick with it. I think crime and the criminal justice system is very interesting. So I'm just gonna stick with it, man. Why not? It was working before. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I appreciate you guys being on this podcast journey with me. Sorry about all the back and forth, but anyhow, Crime in Court USA is back, baby. Let's get into some news, shall we? So late last week, I almost sounded like I said late last week. Some former New Mexico State men's basketball players were charged with sexual crimes, and this comes after a couple of lawsuits were also filed by former players and one of their parents against the school in regards to sexual crimes allegedly committed by former players on the team. So Kim Aiken Jr., Dr. Bradley, sounds like he was trying to play doctor. That's not funny. All right, so Kim Aiken Jr., Dr. Bradley, and DeShawndre Washington were each charged with criminal sexual penetration, criminal sexual contact, and false imprisonment. Several charges each of those crimes. They are accused of holding down other players and student staff members while violently grabbing their genital area, end quote. And that's according to a report from KTSM TV in El Paso. So New Mexico State University, the bitter rival of my alma mater, the University of New Mexico, is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is down not too far from El Paso, Texas. So the El Paso media does cover the school. So they were the first to report on this story as far as I can tell. So yeah, this is the latest, just the latest in a string of horrible events around the program. I mean, this is just a mess over this last year. And it started roughly a year ago. So let's go back in time, shall we, to last year. So at last year's NMSU football game, another heated rivalry between two teams that are absolutely horrible, there was a fight in the stands. The game was in Las Cruces last year, and there was a fight in the stands. So fast forward to basketball season, okay? The New Mexico State men's basketball team travels to Albuquerque to play UNM, and one of New Mexico State's players, Mike Peak, I guess he's texting or messaging this girl who goes to UNM, and he, in the middle of the night, it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., something like that, he goes over to campus. He leaves the hotel, which, of course, you're not supposed to do when you're in town for a basketball game. He goes, I guess, for, a little something, I guess. That's what he was looking forward to, of course. It was a setup, all right? It was revenge for the fight that happened during the football game. So UNM student Brandon Travis, it was all, I guess, orchestrated by him. He wanted a revenge against Peak. And so he set him up with this girl. It was a trap. He comes over and Travis starts shooting at Peak. Peak had a gun on him, which is also a big no-no when you're traveling on a sports trip. So he pulls out his gun. He shoots back at Travis and he kills Travis. Brandon Travis. So Travis dies at the scene, I believe. And there's a shootout. You can see the cameras by a dorm building that I definitely recognized. So yeah, just right out there where students were sleeping, there was a shootout. And Peak was actually never charged with a crime because they determined it was self-defense, but he nonetheless was kicked off the team. And it was a whole thing. I mean, the team like left Albuquerque and went back to Cruces. Of course, the game was canceled, obviously. So the team went back to Cruces without even talking to the cops. So the state police had to stop them on their way. Las Cruces and Albuquerque are about 3 hours apart. There were allegations. I'm not sure whatever came of this, but there were allegations that some coaches were hiding the gun because it was, it was evidence of a crime, and that they were helping out the players or the player peak who, shot somebody. So there were allegations that the coaches were taking part in sort of a cover up as well. I don't know whatever came of that, but anyways, the coaching staff got completely demolished. The head coach was fired. Not too long after that, players left. Then lawsuits came, and then now this. Now this is completely different from that shit. So it was just a horrible sequence of events. Because then I don't know, it wasn't long after the shooting that that this sexual stuff came out. So yeah, not a great time for NMSU men's basketball, which is a shame because they were okay. I guess they would normally win the WAC, which was pretty whack. Not a great conference. They're going up against schools that I've never even heard of, but they were pretty good for that conference, and they would go to the tournament by default for winning their conference. But a couple of years ago, they did actually win the first round game, and they got smoked by, I believe, Gonzaga in the second round. Well, I don't think they got smoked. I think it was a close game. So they used to be like a respectable program. They used to beat UNM. They used to go back and forth. UNM hasn't been that great in a while, but it's a huge fall from grace for the NMSU men's basketball program, and here we go. And these players aren't associated with the team anymore, but this still brings a black eye to the program, no doubt. So anyhow, there's that. Let's move on to the Supreme Court. So earlier this week on Monday, the Supreme Court adopted a code of ethics, historical, because this was the first time the court had ever done that. This came from pressure. They the public trust in the Supreme Court is possibly at an all-time low. And I got to say myself, when I started this podcast a couple years ago and I really started paying attention to the Supreme Court, I just realized how political it was. You naively think that Supreme Court is apolitical because it's supposed to be, right? But that's just not the case at all. It's very political. Right now, it's there's a 6-3 majority from conservative to liberal, and it's just whoever has the majority is going to get the W's. There were a lot of conservative wins with this current iteration of the Supreme Court, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, some gun law stuff where basically they ruled in favor of keeping your guns or carrying guns in public. A lot of conservative wins, right? With the conservative majority. Makes you scratch your head. Anyways, so public trust has been at an all-time low. There was also some revelations about Clarence Thomas with his wife, with him hanging out on yachts with a big Republican donor. You know what I mean? Just it looked like there were improprieties going on, right? So they adopted this code of ethics, and so far it's landed with a big thud. Very disappointing. Pretty much all the media I've seen on it, all the stories, everything just says it's weak. I took a glance at it myself. I'll put a link to it in the episode description, but mostly it's very vague, and most importantly, there's no indication of if a justice breaks these rules, what will happen and who will enforce it. So it pretty much has no teeth at all whatsoever. So it's just really to placate the masses. Hey, you guys don't trust us. You think we should kind of change our ways? Well, here's a code of ethics. Screw it. Hope you guys are happy. And the court did have to come to a unanimous kind of agreement on this code, right? So the vagueness, according to a analysis by the Washington Post, kind of points out that maybe it's vague because they had to come to an agreement on it as well, and they don't want it being used against them, right? They're creating their own rules, which is another thing. I think, here's the thing, guys. I just think the Supreme Court is too powerful. I really do think it is. You can't, I don't even know what steps you could take to remove a justice. That seems pretty vague, too. I don't know if that's ever happened in our country's history, but anyway, so there's that. Not too exciting. I won't really dig more into this, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it's a first for the court, but I don't think anything's going to change. The court's too powerful. Maybe we do have to try to change up how the court is made up and how justices are appointed and stuff. Because the reason they serve lifetime appointments, as far as I know, is so that there's little political influence on it. But dude, that ship has sailed. Whoever's the president, when one of them dies or steps down or whatever and has to be replaced, if that president's a Republican, they're gonna select a conservative. If they're a Democrat, they're going to select a liberal. I mean, it's just the game, man. Just the game. So with all that said, I don't think this buys any more trust in them. You know, I still think the trust is at an all-time low, and possibly even lower because of this, because they're just keeping an eye on themselves. Whatever. Let's move on. So there was an interesting cold case that I feel like I should mention. I do like a good cold case, you know what I mean? So 2 people have been charged in connection to the 1988 death of a 5-year-old girl who was found encased in concrete in Georgia. So the girl's mother, Evelyn Odom, who is now 56, and her former boyfriend, 61-year-old Ulysses Sanders, were both charged with the murder of 5-year-old Kenyatta Odom. Young Kenyatta was found, like I said, encased in concrete. She had never been identified up until this point. Earlier this year in January, the police received a tip from somebody who brought up Kenyatta. Apparently this person, who was not identified, of course, had said that Kenyatta's mother, Evelyn, had said that Kenyatta had gone off to live with her father, but this person had just didn't believe that. Well, they held on to that for 35 years, I guess. But they spoke up in January. The cops, I guess, kind of put some things together and made an ID and charged the parents. It looks like she was abused, that parts of her body were partially submerged in hot water, and just horrible abuse. Horrible. I mean, just to dispose, not only to abuse and kill your child allegedly, but to dispose of the body in such a manner. It's just horrible. But like I said, I like a good cold case. I like when things can be put together like that. But 35 years later, here we are with charges filed. And hopefully, if these are the killers, the people responsible for this death, hopefully they will be brought to justice. That'll remain to be seen how strong the case is moving forward. This is just the beginning, of course. With cases this old, I don't know how it's going to play out. I've never really covered a case where charges were filed this much after the fact, so I might keep an eye on this to see where it goes from here. Actually, there was one in Albuquerque a few years ago. This girl, who's still a high school senior, was attacked in her own home by somebody, and they just couldn't, like, badly. Like, she, I think, lost some motion in her face and stuff. Like, she had some brain damage. And years later, when she was an adult, I think she was still in her 20s, like, not like 35 years later, they caught the guy who did it. They convicted him and everything. You know how they did it? This is why I like cold cases, man. I guess they must have got a tip that it was him or something like that. And he went to McDonald's one day, and he threw away his cup. The cops went in there, got his cup, got DNA from it, and then tied the DNA to the house where the attack took place. So bang, bada boom, there you go, charged. And the victim did have, I guess, somewhat of a connection to him. I guess he, I don't know, showed interest in her or something like that. So it was kind of easy to piece together once they had the DNA match, right? So he got convicted. And yeah, so that was a case where it actually did play out. But again, that wasn't like 35 years later. I don't know how this is going to roll out, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes, guys. Ooh, that was good. Oh, that was fun. It's good to be back in the crime mode, man. This stuff is just interesting to me, dude. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. But I don't know. I just like cover it. So with that said, I think I'm going to try to be more consistent. You know, I say that all the time, Mr. Broken Promises over here. But, you know, I think now that I've kind of figured it out, guys, sometimes it takes you 2+ years to figure something out. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, I really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you to the Patreon supporters, Daniel, Tony, Andres, and Emily. I really love you guys. All right, folks, until next time, my name's Mundo, and I'm out. Peace.